So the GOM, the group of ministers, has recommended the slab of 35% for tobacco and tobacco-related products, also aerated drinks, and this under its GST Rate Rationalisation measures. Currently, such products are taxed at 28%. Let's get the latest from my colleague Sumit Chaturvedi. He's joining us from Delhi with more on this piece of news that's clearly been grabbing business headlines, hasn't it? Sumit, if you can encapsulate what the proposals are.
Well, a group of ministers on GST met yesterday. Now they've proposed a new increase in the GST as far as the some sin items are concerned. They include tobacco products, tobacco, aerated drinks. So this, according to the proposal, the GST would be increased from 28% to 35%. On the other hand, now some other proposals have also been made on textile goods, garments, etc., leather bags, watches, bikes, etc. But this particular sin tax increase has actually, in a way, given some kind of reason to worry for these tobacco product handling companies. Well, on December 21st, in Jaisalmer, the GST Council meet will happen, where Finance Minister will be heading this GST Council meeting. Important issue, another one is insurance premium on health products on that GST could be brought down. So in a way, to compensate the loss when it comes to compensating the loss for bringing down GST on insurance products and premiums, there could be increase in GST on certain products. So these sin items could be some of them.
Those are on the agenda, and the next GST Council meeting takes place on the 21st of December. Like you mentioned, we'll see what happens over there. But tonight we're tackling this critical development in India's fiscal landscape. If this proposed tax rationalization does go through on rated beverages, on cigarettes, on tobacco products from what was 28% to 35%, what does it mean for India's tax ecosystem, for industry stakeholders as well, and of course the broader Indian economy? To discuss all of this, we're joined by Saurabh Agarwal. He is tax partner at EY India, and Rajani Sinha. She is chief economist at CareEdge Group. Thank you both for being here. Let's dive straight in with you, Saurabh. Saurabh, while this aligns with the sin tax principle, do you think A, we need another new slab, and B, will it do a whole lot to bump up government revenues?
So if you look at it, Vikram, the thought process is quite clear. It's not just sin goods. So while sin goods are being taxed at 35%, many of the other goods such as the clothing and other part of the goods are being brought into a 28% ambit. So 28% rate of tax is being more widened. So there are more category of goods and goods which will move into the 28% category. This was initially may not be the thought process of the government, but when we look at the current situation, the revenue collections have been slowing down. And this is what we are seeing. And what government is doing is that wherever there is inelasticity of demand on the products, and the consumption will keep on continuing whether the rate is 28 or whether the rate is 35. In all such cases, government is trying to increase the tax rates on those goods. Another point which is important to understand is, which will come across because of this, is there can be more evasion of tax. Because what we have seen in the past also, whenever there is a tax rate increase on certain products, the evasion increases on those particular set of products. The third and the most important thing which we can look at it is that this is a movement wherein moving towards the larger rationalization of taxes, wherein the slab of taxes will be reduced over a period of time. What government is doing is, as they will do away with the compensatory cess and they'll come out with some health cess or some other kind of cesses, what they're doing towards that particular direction is to come up with a 35% slab for the same goods in the short run, which will continue into, or which will mold into lesser rates of tax over a period of time in future.
Do you think slabs will eventually come down, but is this rationalization to you or not, Rajni? The points that Saurabh is making, of course, while this helps from the perspective of public health goals, what do you reckon will be the inflationary impact of this move? This at a time when the RBI has to do this tough balancing act between rising prices, slowing consumption, dipping wage growth, and of course the overall slide in growth that made us recalibrate our GDP calculations right after that Q2 number kicked in to surprise us all.
So before I go on the growth and inflation impact, I will just add to what Saurabh mentioned earlier. The whole idea of GST was to simplify the tax structure. So we had broadly 4 tax slabs, and the idea was eventually merging of 2 slabs, 12 and 18%, and getting somewhere in between, probably a rate of 15% or so, and have three tax rates. But now we are adding another layer. We're adding another layer of 35%. And if we look at 28% also, the whole idea was that it would include sin goods. But slowly we added more of luxury items to it. We added the, auto, and from what is being proposed now, few of the high value items like watches and even clothes, which are highly priced, would be in that category. So then, the sin goods will probably move to 35%. Then there is no saying going forward, we could see more goods entering the 35% category. So overall, I feel if the idea is to eventually simplify and have lower tax slabs, it's not a good idea to add another tax rate. Now, of course, it has been done from the perspective of improving the revenue, because so far, the economy had been doing well and the GST collection was good. And we also saw, increased compliance and increased efficiency, which ensured that tax to revenue was increasing. But going forward, if things are going to, moderate on the growth front, the government also wants to be ready on what happens to revenue. So probably these steps are being taken from that perspective. Now, if you talk about the impact of that on growth and inflation,
Yes.
probably, growth, see the consumption of these items, of the highly priced items, they are, that income category is not very price sensitive. So probably consumption won't be impacted much.
Right.
But yes, to some extent, consumption would get impacted, and this is not the right time because we are seeing moderation in consumption and
Yes.
we are looking at boosting consumption.
So you're saying that it may not impact it, but how much? Because we're talking about discretionary goods over here, like aerated beverages. Won't it get impacted? Because now we're seeing demand slow down. If that continues, that trend continues, won't this really pull it down further?
Yes, it will to some extent. See, when we talk about high-end watches or high-end shoes, the income category that is spending on those items, they are not very price sensitive. But when we look at something like ready-made garments, which the proposal is that even for items priced higher than 1500, the tax rate will be increased from 12% to 18%. So I think that kind of price slot, if we look at 1500 to 2000, even the middle income category is buying in that price range. So definitely consumption will to some extent get impacted.
Sure.
And like you mentioned, this is not the right time because investment in the economy is not doing well.
Exactly.
And it's mainly the consumption pillar on which the growth is dependent. So in fact, it's very important right now to give consumption stimulus.
Yes.
So yes, from growth perspective, it's not a very positive development.
So private capex has not been picking up, Saurabh. How do you think industries like aerated beverages, they've been arguing that high taxes lead to a demand dip and lower profitability. And if you extrapolate that to the larger discussion on balancing fiscal needs and industry concerns, how really do you see it?
So if you look at all these beverages company have been spending a humongous amount of money on the capex part. So, and that's what we have seen in case of all of them putting up new plants or getting into brownfield expansions, which means that the demand for them is picking up. Anyways, the point is that maybe for the middle income or a lower income group, there may be some bit of impact on consumption. But when we look at overall holistically for the beverages, I don't think so that from a consumption standpoint, maybe it will be a bit of an impact during a short run. But when you talk about mid to long run, there will not be much of an impact because the price of the bottle will increase maybe by a 50 paisa or a rupee, which will not impact much on the consumer part. Of course, when you say that, oh, they are being taxed at a sin rate, that has been a clear thought process of the government for long. Since the inception of GST, they have been very clear that aerated beverages will be taxed at a higher rate because they are considering it to be a problem from the health perspective, and that is leading to obesity, etc. And the only solution which I can foresee is in the long run that as we move across further and as we come closer to March 26, the compensation cess on aerated beverages can go out and the health cess can be far lower than the current compensation cess rate, which will keep the rates at a balanced level. But in the short run, government needs to look into the revenue exchequer, and that's what they're trying to do by way of enhancing the rates over there.
When you look at it from industry's perspective, Saurabh, how exactly does it increase or affect even the compliance burden? Do such moves, do you think it could potentially dissuade foreign investments?
So I don't think from a compliance perspective, it's a bit of a challenge. Of course, someone can say that there is a challenge from a compliance perspective because within the same product category, say apparel, you are putting three rates of goods into it. And of course, you will see that in some manner, people will come up with those specific things, 1499, 9999, and thereafter, in order to save the taxes on those particular type of goods. But if you look at from a compliance standpoint, will it burden the compliances? At least I would say that it's a normal part of doing business in India. I don't think it will have an impact much on the compliance part of this story.
Saurabh, while there is also talk of this tweaking of GST rates for apparel, there would be potential compliance challenges because you did say that, to be able, there is a lot of evasion as well. Do you see that also coming into play over here and the effect on smaller businesses at a time that they are struggling to keep up with the Amazons of the world?
So when we look at from an evasion standpoint, see, when we talk about the organized players, I don't foresee that there'll be evasion over there. But in the unorganized sector, if at all there is a evasion, we have always seen, and that has been a past history. As and when the tax rates have increased, it has led to evasion. The point which we need to be cautious of is that in the short run, and we have seen the GST collection numbers when it came for this particular month. These were basically October numbers which got released, which was a festive season, and the numbers have come down compared to the last month's number. There was a dip by around 2.5, 2.7 odd percent, which shows that there is a bit of an issue when it comes to consumption, and therefore government needs to garner revenue. And these are some of those areas where government feels that there is a likely chance that they can garner more revenues. Of course, there can be some bit of impact on the consumption in the short run, but I don't foresee much of an impact on the industry coming in this regard. And maybe over a period of time, as the collections increase, the government will go back to the right rates of taxes by way of reducing the compensation cess or maybe removing the cess holistically.
Be some balancing over here and that is the rationalization that we're talking about. But Rajani, on that same point, from a macro perspective, in your opinion, does this move towards rate rationalization that we're talking about, does it align with India's broader fiscal and economic goals? Because we are trying to increase our tax to GDP ratio. We are definitely trying to do that. We are also trying to formalize the economy. Can these GST rate hikes help in those macro directions as well?
See, the idea is definitely to increase the revenue. And like Saurabh mentioned, if you look at the GST collection now, we are seeing a moderation. So the benefit that we had seen in the last couple of years seems to be dwindling with the economic growth moderating. But I feel if we look at the longer picture, eventually we have to look at a simplified GST structure. Because once we add more slabs or we increase rates, it is very difficult to go back. And we have seen that in the past. Even now, if we look at this state compensation cess, and as it gets over in FY26, now there are talks of converting that to something else, some other cess, because states do not want to lose on that revenue. So the point I'm making is that once you add something like this, it's not that when the economic situation is better, you can then go back on these measures. So I think the government should tread very cautiously. The whole idea was to simplify the tax structure, and they should stick to that. As far as taking care of government finances is concerned, they should look at other aspects as to how that can be taken care of.
Yes.
And at least on the center's front, if you look at government finances, they have been doing well. They have been able to achieve fiscal deficit lower than what they had budgeted for in the past.
Yes.
Yes, it is a concern because especially now you see with the kind of goals some of the states have been announcing, it's going to be a big challenge.
Right.
But I think this is not the solution to take care of that challenge.
Right. So, yes, the social welfare, the freebie culture that we're seeing that much more, especially during election time, all of that needs to be compensated. And you're seeing that, revenues to stay at the elevated levels as far as GST is concerned. Perhaps this is the government's way of doing it. What's your thought on this, Saurabh? With the GST Council now set to meet on the 21st of December, according to you, which are the key considerations that the Council should have before them to ensure that these rate changes don't render unintended consequences like the kind that Rajani is pointing out?
Think it was very important that they should have looked into a simplified rate structure. One of the way of garnering the revenue would have been to increase the cess. The cess was for a specified time period. By way of increasing the rate, as Rajni was mentioning, it can go and hit the industry in the long run. So maybe that could have been a better idea. But when I look at, and maybe one of the thought process which I see from the government standpoint is that they're increasing it to 35% as a move towards rationalization in near future, where they will bring down the number of slabs. Because anyways, the cess has to go away at some point of time, because it's still March 2026 only when the government will ensure that the cesses are removed. What is also important to understand is that they want to bring down the rate of tax on certain products as well. Because if you see packaged drinking water of 20 liter and above, they want to bring down the rate from 18 to 5%. From bicycles, they want to bring down the rate of tax from 12% to 5%. On exercise notebooks for the kids, they want to bring down the tax rates from 12% to 5%. So somewhere they are trying to do a balancing. Of course, it is leading to a bit of a complex structure. And in maybe in a mid to long run, when I have to look at, they will like to bring down the rate of tax on two-wheelers from 28 to 18%. They would like to bring down the tax rate on hybrid cars by maybe removing the cesses. They would like to remove the, or they like to bring down the tax rates on ghee stroke butter, which is required from 12 to 5%. Yeah. So, and even for solar modules from 12 to 5%. So all these products, when they over a period of time they are looking at balancing, somewhere there has to be a rate increase which has to happen. That is how they'll try to balance the two aspects to ensure that from a overall revenue neutral rate perspective, revenue neutral rate was thought of somewhere close to 15 to 16%. Today we are at a rate of around 11 to 12%. What does it mean? There is somewhere the difference when it comes to the revenue neutrality. So somewhere they are trying to balance by way of this particular measure.
Well, how far they'll come is going to be very closely watched. But yes, the proposed GST rate changes are not just about tweaking tax slabs. They have wide-ranging implications for industry, for consumer behavior, and indeed the broader economy. And this at a critical time of consumption slowdown. And while raising tax on sin goods like tobacco and aerated beverages could make sense from public health goals, definitely. But questions remain about the timing of such moves, their net revenue impact, and also enforcement challenges. Rajani Sinha, Saurabh Agarwal, thank you both for joining us with your perspectives on India Tonight. Much appreciated.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.